dark.
Now we're live on
Scared
YouTube.
of the
It's
dark.
okay.
Okay, starting
We're
now.
not,
So
we're not streaming on YouTube, so we can call the meeting to order at 5:02. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Abeta. And then we will have the salute to the New Mexico flag led by Councilor Cassett Sanchez, and the invocation led by Councilor Romero Worth, with remembrances following that. So let's stand as we are able and begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
If we could all take a moment to bow our heads. I'd like to take a moment to pray for all of those whose lives and livelihoods have been affected by this pandemic that we refer to as COVID-19. I would also ask that we remember what a privilege it is to serve, even in these challenging times, and that we respect each other, that we listen, and that we work our hardest to make decisions that are in the best interest of our community, especially as we face the challenges of these times. And so I just take a minute for all of that. And if there are any remembrances, now would be a time to Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Councilor Romero Worth. I don't want to step in front of you on this, but I'd like to have a remembrance of my dear friend and a dear friend of this city, Greg Bemis. I was told Greg he was my favorite Republican, and we would have a good laugh over that. And we had hours and hours of terrific discussion, and he was a dear, insightful friend. Loved a good laugh. And Maria and I had lunch every third Thursday of the month with Greg and Lisa. And we did that for a few years. We're gonna miss him dearly. He was a great friend to this town. So keep Mrs. Bemis in your prayers and your good thoughts.
Thank you, Councilor. Others? Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Councilor. I just wanted to recognize the life of Dorotea Dari Montoya. Dari was a warrior woman from El Norte. She grew up in Peñasco and she raised 6 children, one of them being my gymnastics teacher and lifelong friend and colleague, Roger Montoya. Dari was raised, well, she raised her children, but she also nurtured 4 generations of young people in the Espanola Valley at Espanola Valley High School. And she was a pioneer and fierce advocate in the movement for school-based wellness programs across New Mexico. She was a nurse practitioner. She was hired as a school nurse at Espanola, and then opened a clinic in 1983 aimed at curbing teen pregnancy. The clinic provided wellness counseling as well as comprehensive birth control and education services. And although she's no longer with us physically, I will remember her, and as well as others will, as well as her consejos, her advice, her life lessons. They'll live on and continue to guide her family and friends. So I just wanted to say rest in power, Dari, and vaya con Dios.
Are there others? I'll just add my condolences to the Bemis family. Greg Bemis was an important community member. He ran for public office. He raised a family of 5 children. He was a business leader and cared deeply about this community and the state of New Mexico and the policies that we all enact. And he cared a lot about having a voice in the policy process. So my best to Lisa and the family, and I ask that we just take a minute to remember these people of our community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, everybody. With that, could the city clerk, please call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Beta,
Here.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Here.
Counselor Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Lindell,
Here,
Counselor Rivera,
Here.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Here.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Here.
Counselor Villarreal,
Present.
Mayor Weber.
Present.
You do have a quorum present, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Before we move to the approval of the agenda, I think the city attorney has an item she wants to call to our attention. Perhaps.
Yes, Mayor. The matter about authorizing the city manager to sign for the federal grant for the airport is no longer needed. So I would just recommend that either we amend the agenda to take it off, or when we get there, we could table it. Basically, the signatory was changed to the mayor, which is what it, and we were able to sign it because it was approved by the governing body at the last meeting. So that item was there just in case that didn't get changed.
So we can either have a motion to strike it from the agenda and then approve or vote on the agenda as amended. Is that would be approved? That would be acceptable? Does anybody want to make a motion to remove item 20 from the agenda?
Move to remove item 20.
Second.
Okay, can we vote on that proposal? Call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor. Do you want to just make a motion to approve the agenda
As
as
amended.
amended to include that? Or do
Can we
you?
do it that way? Sure, let's do it that way. So we
Okay.
have an amendment proposed. If we don't have to adopt the amendment, we can just approve the agenda as amended. Let's do that. So is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Councilor Villarreal has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I heard a second first from Councilor Romero Worth. So let's call the roll on that motion.
Yes, sir. Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
yes,
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is approved.
Okay, so that's good. And now the consent calendar. Are there items that members of the governing body would like to take off of the consent calendar? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move for approval.
Councilor
Second.
Rivera? Councilor Rivera made the motion to approve. Was it Councilor Vihel Coppler who seconded it? Yes, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll, please?
Yes, Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
yes,
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion has been approved.
Very well, thank you. With that being the case, we move to we have a series of requests for approval to publish notice of public hearings. The first one, if the clerk would read item number 11, please.
Excuse me, Mayor, if we could back up first. The
What did we
minutes.
miss?
we'll go
Minutes.
to the minutes. So we
Gotta
have
get the
three
minutes.
sets, three separate motions.
Thank you. Okay,
sir.
minutes. Approval of minutes needs to be done first. Special City Council meeting of May 4th. There are minutes for that. Are there amendments or changes to those minutes? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Counselor Lindell. Is there a
Second.
second from Counselor Rivera? If we could vote on approving the minutes from May 4.
Yes, Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Second set of minutes are from the special city council meeting of May the 5th, 2020. And we have Counselor Cassett Sanchez has a finger in the air.
Yes, on page 7 of the minutes in the third paragraph, it says she asked Director Jones about emphases during those times compared with others. I'm not sure what that means, but what I did ask was what do we use to irrigate the other parks? And then it'll make the next sentence make more sense. That was all.
Okay, so we have a correction to the minutes as noted by Counselor Cassett Sanchez. Are there other amendments or changes? If not, is there a motion to approve as amended?
Move
Move
to
for
approve
approval
as
as
amended.
amended.
I heard Counselor Lindell first. Counselor Rivera, you want to second it?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the minutes from the 5th of May as amended. Could the clerk please
Yes.
call the roll?
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
All right, and then the third set of minutes involve the regular city council meeting from May the 13th of 2020, and Counselor Cassett Sanchez has her hand in the air.
On page 13 from communications from the governing body, the special thank you should be to Ms. Jennifer Fabian. And then on page 14, I also, I had requested to be a co-sponsor for Counselor Romero Worth's ordinance, and I wasn't listed there.
Okay. So there are a couple of amendments to the minutes as noted. Are there other amendments or changes to the minutes of the regular council meeting of May the 13th? If not, is there a motion to approve as amended?
Move to approve.
Counselor Garcia has made the motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a second from Counselor Cassett Sanchez. Can we call the roll, please?
Yes, Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Okay, thank you for the catch.
Sir,
Are there any presentations this evening? I note none on the agenda.
none this evening, sir.
Very well. Then now, I jumped the gun before, but now we're going to deal with item number 11. If the city clerk would give us a read on that.
Yes, this is request for approval to publish notice of public hearing for June 10th of 2020. This is bill number 2020-10, an ordinance creating a new section 20-7 SFCC 1987 regarding the use of face coverings by employees and customers when inside places of business and by all members of the public when in public places where social distancing is not possible, establishing an effective date as the date of the bill adoption. We have Jesse Guillen for questions, and Councillor Romero Worth is the main sponsor.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Councillor Vihil Coppler has a hand up.
Thank you. I'm not seeing it, but I thought there was going to be a warning first. Is that not so?
Mayor, Councillor Vihil Coppler, yes, I am proposing an amendment when this is just to approve the public hearing notice.
Okay,
And I am in the next committee or its next stop proposing an amendment that would make the first offense a warning.
okay, thank you.
Very good. Other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. This is, as noted, a request to publish for a public hearing.
Yes. Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes?
Councillor Vihil Coppler,
Yes,
Councillor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councillor Beta,
Yes.
Councillor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Rivera,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion has been approved.
thank you. The next item is item 12, if the city clerk can read us into that.
Yes, this is a request for approval to publish notice of public hearing on June 24th, 2020. This is bill number 2020-11. It's an ordinance relating to the City of Santa Fe Economic Development Plan Ordinance, Article 11-11, SFCC 1987, approving and adopting an amended local economic development project participation agreement between the City of Santa Fe and Descartes Labs, Inc. for design, development, and construction of tenant improvements and lease payments for expansion of a New World headquarters facility, a local economic development project. Any questions? Fabian Trujillo is staff on this item.
Okay. Are there, Councillor Vihil Coppler's hand is up.
thank you. I just wanted to say that the Economic Development Committee met at 1 o'clock today, had extensive discussion on it, and it received very favorable approval. So it did pass that committee. And as chair of that committee, I would like to be a co-sponsor on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments or discussion, or is there a motion?
Move for approval.
We have a motion from Councillor Abeta to approve
Second,
and a second from Councillor Vihil Coppler. Could we call the roll, please?
Yes,
If
sir.
there's no further discussion.
Okay. Councillor Vihil Coppler,
yes,
Councillor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councillor Beta,
Yes.
Councillor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Rivera,
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes?
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
thank you. Could you introduce us to item number 14 on the agenda, please?
Okay, this will be item 13. It's
13, right.
Yes, request for approval to publish notice of public hearing on June 24th, 2020. This is Bill 2020-12. Ordinance relating to the City of Santa Fe Economic Development Plan Ordinance, Article 1111, SFCC 1987, approving and adopting a local economic development project participation agreement between the City of Santa Fe and Descartes Labs, Inc. for an economic development loan project for lease payments to provide assistance for the negative financial impacts of COVID-19. And Fabian Trujillo is staff on this item.
Thank you. And Councillor Vihil Coppler, I see your hand.
thank you. I wanted to state again that the Economic Development Committee met just a few hours ago and wholeheartedly approved this item. And I wish to be added as a co-sponsor.
Very good.
Thank you.
Other comments or discussion?
So I move to approve.
We got a motion to approve from Councillor Vihil Coppler. Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Abeta has seconded it. Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
yes,
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes,
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
thank you very much. That then does bring us to item number 14, not 13, but 14.
We're on 14, yes. This is consideration of a resolution adopting the Santa Fe promise to promote a culture of public health to stem the tide of COVID-19 outbreaks and ensure a safe return to financial prosperity.
Move to approve.
There a second?
Second.
I got a second. I heard Counselor Lindell before anyone else. Is there discussion? Counselor Beal Coppler.
thank you, Mayor. I support this. I just wanted to, it reminded me of our former Governor Bruce King, who I believe in his heyday, because he had some very interesting quotes. I believe he said at one time, a promise is not a commitment. So, good luck with this one. Thank you.
Thank you. He was a colorful architect of the English language, famous for his opening a box of Pandoras as well.
Right.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
yes,
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
I promise. Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
thank you. That then brings us to item number 15, which you could introduce to us.
Yes, item 15 is request for approval of the Santa Fe Railyard Community Corporation's proposed amendment number 9 to the amended and restated lease and management agreement to defer a portion of rent due to the repercussions of COVID-19. We have Rich Brown and Robert Siqueiros presenting.
Okay, I already see Counselor Cassett Sanchez's hand is up. I wonder, would it serve to have Rich say a few words first, or would you like to ask questions right away?
No, I will be recusing myself, so I will be leaving the meeting, and then Jarrell, shall I look for your text for when I shall return? Okay, thank
Right.
you so much.
I had forgotten you had done that previously. Thank you for raising your hand before we got going on this. Much appreciated. Okay, so that with that procedural matter taken care of, Rich, is there anything you would like to say about this, or shall we just go directly to questions if members of the governing body have some?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, good evening. I don't have much to say. I think that we're all very aware of the health pandemic and economic collapse in our city and the country. And so we are looking at this amendment with a split payment to the Railyard Corporation to make sure that we are support of trying to make sure there's some vibrancy as we come out of this and the city is stabilized. So this is the work of a lot of people in public works, economic development, and the city attorney's office to come to a satisfying agreement on behalf of the city and also our partners at the Railyard Corporation.
Thank you. With that, are there questions directed toward any of the folks who are on the screen who have been working this this agreement? Members of the governing body, any questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Councilor Lindell has moved to approve this item. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second from Councilor Vihel Coppler. Is there discussion of the motion? Can the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
yes,
Counselor O'Meara Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
thank you.
Thank you.
If you could read us into the next item, item number 16.
Yes, this is request for approval of amendment number 1 to the Garson Studios lease agreement. It's item number 19-0341, amending sections 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, and 16 to change the term of the lease and add 2-year-long holdover terms from July 2020 to 2021 and July 2021 to July 2022. Remove Studio C from the premise, change the base rent rates, allow the city to modify ingress and egress as necessary for construction, modify the termination provision to coincide with terms, and to allow assignment by the lessor. And this is being staffed by Rich Brown and Andrea Salazar.
Thank you. Once again, did we, let's see, I assume that Councilor Cassett Sanchez is now rejoining us. Is that correct? Although I don't see her on the screen.
Make sure she's not in the waiting room or something.
There's nobody in that virtual waiting room that I see, but maybe she was being super careful about not coming in too soon. I'm going to wait for just a second to see if she can join us.
She's trying to get back in.
Okay. I know she is. It's sometimes hard to rejoin when you've checked out. We'll just hit the pause button for 1 minute here. Christine, are you spotting any problem with the technology that's keeping her from rejoining us? Oh, there she
Nope,
is.
she actually just popped back in and I just let her on. So we're good to go, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. We didn't want to proceed without you. So welcome back. We're taking up item number 16, which the clerk read before you rejoined us, involving the Garson Studios lease. And Mr. Brown is the person who could speak to it, but I think before we ask him to say anything, are there questions from the governing body? Councilor Villarreal, you have your hand up.
Maybe staff should give a presentation first and that might answer my questions.
Okay, let's do it that way. I think either way, but I think Mr. Brown is ready and so is the city attorney's office. So why don't you give us an overview about what this is designed to do?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. This amendment is to help our Garson Studios group close a deal on a potentially $110 million TV production. There's a nationally known cable TV production facility group that wants to start a series here and use the Midtown campus as a production headquarters. The series starts at the pilot 1 year, but potentially could go to a 7-year series, and that would be a sustainable income for the city and also boost our film industry, which we see Garson Studios as a way to do that. Some numbers of interest is that we believe that the lease amount, as we approve this amendment, would come into about $900,000 a year, and with a $110 million film production in Santa Fe, we could see a $20 million economic impact through the course of the production that's there. I think that's also we're extending this amendment for a 2-year span because we're in the middle of doing our exclusivity agreement with our developer. So there's a couple moving parts happening at once. And so we wanted to give the current studio owner or leaser the ability to be flexible with this cable TV contract so that the production company felt that there was a seamless transition for them as they moved in and started their production. So on top of giving this Garson Studios some flexibility, we also carved out Studio C so that our developer and the University of New Mexico, the community college, can start a workforce development pipeline for sort of below the line crew members so that we can address some of the job training and job creation that would come with this very large production install. Well, that's kind of an overview of the amendment and why we're very eager to get passed and move forward so that we can get back to the studio folks to say that we're ready to move forward with the city of Santa Fe in film production.
Councillor Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You did answer my questions. It was about Studio C and the use of it for educational purposes. So does that mean the change of the rate, the base rate rates is being adjusted because of Studio C?
No, the base rates changes are being done because we are adding a bigger footprint. They want a larger footprint. And so currently the Garson Studios only had the studio and another building. And so we're adding a couple more buildings. And so we had to put a base rate for all those buildings. We want to monetize ones that they've just been sitting there. So, you know, Driscoll Gym, Mouton Hall, and et cetera, that we're adding on to it. So that's why the base rate is changing on.
Thank you for that clarity. And then the modification of the termination provision that was done, can you elaborate about why that was needed?
Mayor and Councilor, I'm going to turn to our city attorney, staff, Andrea, to sort of articulate that for me so that I don't go into another path.
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Villarreal. The reason for that is the term was originally drafted for the 36-month holdover period, which allowed for termination 60 days prior to the next term. Because we've changed the term provision, so they have two year-long blocks, we needed to change the way that that termination language worked. So now it's termination only for not meeting the contract, not necessarily for any reason whatsoever. So we've modified some of the terms in here. This is mainly for the production company. So you'll also notice that we don't have any other holdover periods. So it's two 2-year sections. And if they don't obtain this production company, then the lease ends. If they don't get a second year, the lease also ends. So there are things in it that still maintain a termination, but it also removed the 60-day provisions for 6-month holdover termination.
Got it. Thank you. That was helpful. No further questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions from the governing body about this matter? Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Councilor Abeyta moves to approve, and who was the second?
Second.
I heard from Councilor Villarreal a second. So could we call the roll, please?
Yes. Councillor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Rivera,
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councillor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councillor Beta,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown and company. That brings us to item number 17, if the clerk would introduce us to that.
Yes, this is a resolution extending the state of emergency proclaimed by the mayor on May 25th, 2020 by 60 days pursuant to section 20-1.3C SFCC 1987.
Okay. I don't know if the city attorney wants to comment on this. Essentially, we're simple. My feeling about this is that we are still finding our way forward through this double barreled emergency of COVID-19 and the aftershock to the economy. We're essentially renewing the prior resolution, extending it, and adding some comments about the economic challenges we're facing, as well as referencing the need for all of us to cooperate so that we stay safe, which will then enable us to reopen in a much more successful ongoing way. Happy to take questions.
Mayor,
Yes,
move to approve.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councillor Lindell has seconded. Are there comments or questions, discussion? Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Rivera,
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councillor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councillor Beta,
Yes.
Councillor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
The motion has been approved.
thank you. Could you bring us to item 18 then?
Yes, 18 is approval to join the Los Angeles and other local governments in an amicus brief to be filed in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals case number 20-1160 in support of refugee organizations' challenge of the 2019 executive order that limited federal resettlement of refugees to those jurisdictions in which both the state and local governments have consented to receive refugees under the Department of State's Reception and Placement Program. And we have Aaron McSherry, our city attorney.
Thank you, Clerk. Thank you, Mayor Weber. Both 18 and 19 are requests to join amicus briefs. The first is actually with the City of Los Angeles, and the second is with the County of Los Angeles and other governments. The first one, the U.S. Conference of Mayors asked us to join as one of their member agencies. The U.S. Conference of Mayors was submitted an amicus in the district court on this matter, and now it's being appealed, and they're asking the member agencies to participate in this amicus brief with Los Angeles. And basically, the federal government, through executive order, limited the ability to resettle refugees in only locations where both the city and the state had agreed to certain criteria, which were developed by the federal government. So right now there is an injunction, and that injunction is on appeal to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in the Federal Circuit Court. So basically, we would be protesting that additional requirement that would limit the places in the U.S. in which refugees can resettle.
And so in effect, 18 and 19 are partner activities.
Well, they're both limitations on federal support of immigrants, but in different contexts. 18 is about resettlement, and then 19, which we'll read as well, but is about some of this recent federal relief funding and limiting its availability to be used to restricting most immigrant categories, to only limiting it to very few non-citizen potential applicants. So it would decrease the ability of funding for educational purposes on 19. So DeVos is the Secretary of Education in the federal government, and so it's protesting her administrative rules that would set what those federal funds could be used for. And the original appropriation had no such limitation. Those limitations were added via administrative rule, and those administrative rules are now being protested in court.
Got it. So let's take them one at a time. Didn't mean to jump the gun.
It's okay.
Are there
They're of a theme, that is for sure, but they are different pots of funding that are being attacked essentially.
So are there questions for the city attorney concerning item 18 in the first amicus brief?
I'll move for approval on item 18.
Second.
There's a motion from Council Rivera and a second from Councilwoman Villarreal on item 18. Discussion? Could the clerk call the roll then?
Yes, Councillor Rivera,
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councillor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved. Thank you.
All right, and then we got a early glimpse of item number 19. Are there questions for the city attorney about item 19? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilwoman Villarreal and Councilwoman Joanne Vihel Coppler have moved and seconded the adoption of item 19. Is there discussion? Could we call the roll?
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Beta,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion has been approved.
very well. Item 20, we have removed from the agenda
Correct.
previously. So we will take up item 21, if you can read us into that one.
This is a request for approval of the fiscal year 2021 City of Santa Fe employee insurance plans. We have Bernadette Salazar, HR Director, presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Over the last few weeks at hearings before the Finance Committee and Public Works, Public Utilities Committee, as well as lengthy conversations with the Benefits Committee that is primarily made up of union leadership, finance and HR staff members, we have been considering the city's medical insurance plans. We have presented a variety of options, developed comparisons to other governmental agencies, including the state, Santa Fe County, and other jurisdictions, look back at previous years and the record of claims, increases, demands on our reserve funding, and answered a variety of questions about the deliberations before the governing body. We're taking this up now for a number of reasons. Leaving the current plan in place only exposes the city to more financial risk. Furthermore, we want to have plans in place as we reach the open enrollment period. We have historically done this prior to the city budget being adopted. The city has been on a fiscal year schedule for benefits, and one of the suggestions has been made in the course of committee deliberations to move to a calendar year schedule. This is a suggestion that we can take up and move to, even if the governing body tonight were to adopt a plan under the current schedule. The city's contract with Cigna is another matter of interest. The city has contracted with Cigna since 2015 to offer employer-sponsored health and life insurance benefits to benefit eligible city employees. And just recently, the governing body approved an extension to the city contract for 3 additional years, which will conclude June 30th of 2023. Currently, the city pays Cigna about $590,000 per year, or 2.6% of our total medical plan expenses, to administer the plan and to provide stop-loss insurance to protect the plan from large claims and to provide claims funding. The stop-loss insurance is approximately $1.3 million annually, or 6% of the total medical plan expenses. The vast majority of the city's expenses is tied to the claims that we pay. The city opted to request an extension to the contract with Cigna for a number of reasons. One being that Cigna offered a favorable rate for stop-loss insurance. Cigna's rate for the administrative fees for the duration of the contract were also favorable. And Cigna continued to offer the wellness grant of $100,000 for use by city employees. While the city could have gone out for RFP, the fundamental data concerning the city's history of claims and benefits paid out would not have changed, nor would our commitments under our collective bargaining agreements. At the same time, because of the complex plan designs the city currently offers, an RFP represents a significant undertaking with no guarantee of more or better different options since the underlying data remains the same. It should also be noted that approving an option tonight does not prohibit and can actually enable a number of positive steps moving forward. For example, we can immediately explore shifting to a calendar year rather than a fiscal year schedule for benefits. We can explore a salary-based structure as identified in previous meetings, such as the one used by the state of New Mexico. We can initiate monthly meetings of the Benefits Committee with monthly updates to the governing body as we monitor the trends of our claims. If the trends are headed in a way that threatens the financial integrity of our fund, we can bring recommendations for changes to the governing body. We can explore another open enrollment as early as mid-October if the city concludes that plan changes are necessary. If trends are moving in a more positive direction, we can also provide the reassurance to the Benefits Committee and the governing body in real time. Given all of the above, here's what we're recommending for FY21. The city is proposing a minimal plan design change. Our goal is to reduce costs somewhat while making the fewest changes to employees and their benefits. Over the last approximately 2.5 years, the city has experienced increases in costs of claims. At the same time, as a result of this pandemic, the city is facing financial crisis, as so are many of our employees. Our aim is to reduce the financial burden on our employees while beginning to come to terms with the city's own fiscal challenges. We need to combine caution with our finances with concern for our people. Balancing those two, we propose to use fund balance dollars to offset significant new costs to employees as identified in option 1 of the presentation that Ayan will be presenting shortly. This option is not without an element of financial risk, however, which is why we will monitor its performance on a monthly basis and provide the reports identified above. It does not minimize the impact to employees during these certain and challenging times. It allows us to analyze the impact of the few changes contained in this option, and it will also permit us to look at other proposals for change that have been offered. Its greatest risk, which needs to be recognized, is the deep withdrawal from our fund balance to cover option 1 of the presentation. If the city were to experience another year of high claims, essentially claims in excess of the revenues brought in the situation that we are in right now, the city will need to consider other funding sources or new plan design changes to fund the plan and pay claims. With that, I respectfully request that the governing body approve option 1, in which Ayan will be going over now. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, I guess, Ms. Montano, you're the spokesperson at the moment.
Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
You have the virtual floor.
Okay, thank you. I am going to share my screen so we can all view the information that Ms. Salzar mentioned. So we have been working with the HR team, and we have made multiple presentations to different committee members, the unions, to discuss some of the options to help curb the budget impact that the medical plan was facing. And this first slide is just giving you an overview of what the current benefit structure is. The city offers basically 3 levels of plans referred to as the premium plan, the core plan, and the HRA plan. Under each one of those benefit levels, there is 2 sets of plan offerings. One is offered to the non-union, police, and ASME unions, and then there is a separate plan that is offered to fire employees. The structure was done back in 2015 when some plan design changes, and to remain in compliance with the fire union collective bargaining agreement, we had to separate the plans so that way we could comply with what was in those agreements. So just wanted to remind you what is being offered today. In the red shows where there's differentials for the fire benefits compared to what the remainder of the employees are offered. So as Berna mentioned, we evaluated multiple options, and based on feedback from the unions and the various committees that we presented to, really moving forward with the ask to approve moving to benefit option 1. And this page highlights the differences in where those changes would be compared to what you offer your benefits today. What is being proposed is that there are changes made to the premium plans, which is where the vast majority of your employees are enrolled under. And so when we look at this on this page, we have column numbers up at the top, column A and B. Those are the current premium plans being offered to your employees. When we look under the purple box, column C would be the new premium plan that is being offered to the non-union employees, police, and AFSCME union employees. And then column D would be the fire plan. This column D maintains compliance with the fire's collective bargaining agreement, which states that there cannot be any changes to the co-pays. So the only items that were changed to their plan were some of the visit limitations to certain benefits. So on this screen, we've highlighted the blue boxes where there are benefit changes, and the font is in red. And you can see it's basically making some increases to most of the co-pays on the non-union police and AFSCME plan. It is also changing the structure on some of the other services where we are bucketing acupuncture, chiropractic, and naturopathy services all into one bucket, to where there would be a 24 combined visit limit for those 3 types of services. It would be pulling out massage therapy into its own bucket with a separate copay with a lower visit limit. You can see reducing that limit to 60 or 6 visit limit, but a $50 copayment for the non-union plan. Physical, speech, and occupational therapy, we made a copayment change to that category based on some feedback from some of the other committee meetings. We did reduce that down to a $20 copayment per some of the counselors' suggestions, with a 30 visit limit. So just wanted to take a moment to see if there's any questions regarding this option.
At this point, are there questions, or do you want to wait until the presentation is completed and we open the floor for discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Vihil Coppler.
I have other questions, but I'll wait on those. But I am wondering, we just at 4:30 got another one of these presentations from Bernadette Salazar. And so I'm wondering, what's the difference here? Are we looking at the one we just got at 4:30 right now, Dawn, or are we looking at yours? What are we doing here?
I believe this should be the same version that was distributed to you by Bernadette at 4:30.
Well, why would we get it again at 4:30? I don't understand.
Mayor, Councilor Vihil Coppler, this is the one that you received at 4:30 is the one that Dawn is presenting on right now. And this takes into consideration the changes made after the discussion last night. So those are the only changes that are made, but it is the same one that Dawn is presenting on right now.
Okay, and then just another kind of a point of order. I wasn't aware that counselors during committee could make changes. And I know it was only an informational item. It wasn't something we could vote on. Although I don't necessarily disagree with the changes, but if I had known that, then I would have certainly jumped in there with changes. So that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so are there, I think if there are other people who want to address where we are right now, I think that would be appropriate. If you'd like to wait till we get through the entire presentation, and then we'll have a very wide-ranging discussion among all the governing body. So why don't we carry on with, you've laid out this page. What's next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we provided a second option, which is a pretty significant change in benefits for the employees. And with this option, it would change the premium plan to be comparable to the benefit option being offered by the state of New Mexico. So it would more closely align the deductibles and co-payments, cost sharing, prescription co-pays with what the state of New Mexico offers their employees. It would still keep the fire union employees on their own separate plan, so that way there is compliance with the union collective bargaining agreement. But you can see there's some pretty dramatic changes. It would shift a lot more out-of-pocket expense to your employees at time of service, but just we wanted to provide you with an option to show like what kind of changes you would need to make to be able to keep your medical budget at a no increase. And we'll go over those financial numbers in just a moment. So when we look at the total costs, in column A in the table with the blue headings, that is your projected total costs for the 2019-2020 plan year. So we're looking at the expenses for the year to finish out about 19.966 million. Of that total cost, that includes the fixed costs you pay to Cigna to administer your plan, the stop loss premiums you pay to protect your plan against large claims, and the funding you put aside to actually pay the claims. So that revenue comes from employees' contributions that come out of their paychecks and what the employer, the city of Santa Fe, contributes. So on row 5, you can see that through their payroll deductions, the employees contribute about 4.692 million, whereas on row 7, the city contributes 15.274 million. These contribution splits are in compliance with what is spelled out in the union bargaining agreements, where the city picks up 76.5% of the premium. So when we look at column B, this is if we renew the plan, making no changes, we'd be looking at increasing the total cost for the 2020-2021 plan year to $21,843,804. So that is a $1,876,890 increase overall, a 9.4 increase. As Bernadette mentioned during her introduction, she is recommending that the city approve moving to option 1, which will help reduce the increase to the renewal. It would take it down to $21,533,709 that you see in column C. That would be an overall increase of 1.566 million or 7.8%. So it would roughly, by making these changes, save the plan overall $310,000. When we split that total cost out between employee contribution and employer, the employees contribution for the year would be a little over 5 million, where the city of Santa Fe in row 7, column C, would be $16,473,287. So that would be an increase to the city's budget of almost $1.2 million. So as Bernadette has suggested is, if we look at using the fund balance to offset some of this increase to minimize the budget increase to the city, when we look at the table on the right under purple, the current balance in the medical fund is at 6.2 million. Right now, we're projecting a $2 million shortfall to the current plan year. So we need to reserve $2 million of that $6 million to set aside to cover the shortfall. We also need to conserve the IBNR balance. So this is to ensure that we have funds available to pay for claims that have taken place but have not been presented for payment under the city's plan. So that leaves our fund balance at $2.54 million. If we use that $2.54 million, if you move back to the blue table and look down on row 10, if we take the increase to the employer of $1.198 million from that balance, that would leave the city's medical fund balance at $1.325 million. If we also offset the increase that's being proposed to the employees to help them during this financial need, understanding that now they will be paying out of pocket a little bit more at time of service, that would take a $368,000 from the fund balance, leaving the fund at a $957,000 balance. So the caution we have with that is if claims come in running higher than they are projected to run, which is, could happen, we could deplete that balance and may need to tap into other resources within the city's general fund to help cover a shortfall. And if it's decided that we want to rebuild the fund balance, looking at future years, we would need to, when we're projecting costs, look at adding an additional 4 to 5% to the increase to be able to build that fund up for every $1 million in shortfall. So want to pause there because this is the financials around the medical.
Why don't you complete the presentation, then we'll look forward to general questions.
The second piece of the presentation was to look at the life insurance benefits. And what we were proposing is a possible option to make changes to the city's life benefits being offered to the employees to align them more alongside what we see with other employers. Currently, the city offers employees a $10,000 basic life benefit. The city shares the cost of that expense with the employees. So the city picks up 65% of the cost for that $10,000 benefit, and the employee pays 35% of it. And then the employees have the option to buy additional life coverage through the voluntary program. And so under a normal voluntary program, that additional coverage should be 100% paid for by the employee. Today, the city is contributing towards that cost dependent upon how much the employee buys. So what we are presenting is to take the city's benefit from a $10,000 benefit to a $50,000 benefit, which is more in line with what we see with other competitors. It provides beneficiaries with just a little bit more of a benefit to cover funeral expenses and have the city pay 100% of that cost. So you can see on rows 1 and 2, the annual premium for the current benefit is $16,528 a year. That would go up to $78,144. So it's an increase of $61,000. However, you are paying approximately about 50%, I would say, by the time we average it all off on the different tiers of the voluntary benefits. So if you move to this program and stop contributing towards the cost of the voluntary, you would actually come out with a lower expense for this on the city's end. And so we are not proposing any changes to what the employees can buy. It's just a change in how it is paid for. And that's the conclusion of the presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Let's see. We have some hands up to start with. Councilor Rivera, you are first in line, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Ayan and Ms. Salazar. I think my first question is for Ms. Salazar. I've been on the council for 9 years, and I've heard this similar kind of presentation about every 2 years since then. I think there's a misconception that we're talking about this because of the $100 million shortfall in projected budget, but that's not true. We would be here talking about this either way. Is that correct?
Rivera, yes, you're absolutely correct. This situation has nothing to do with the pandemic that we're currently facing.
All right, and then at committee the other night, there was a talk about going out to bid, and I remember one of the other times where we had this similar type of discussion. We talked about moving to the state plan, and there was I don't remember who the HR director was at the time, but we were told that if you try to switch during a year where your payments are high, it actually works against you. Is that correct?
Yes, so if we were to look at the state's plan, that would essentially be going to a fully insured plan, and they look at the history of your claims. So if you look at the historic information of the last at least 2.5 years, our claims have been really high. So that's what they're going to base the rates on. And that will include the stop loss insurance that we've talked about. And Don, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, but you're correct that it would be, the rates would be higher based on the claims.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Rivera, this is Todd Burley with Aon. That is correct, especially when moving from a self-funded to a fully insured plan. The claims are scrutinized as the insurer is taking on the risk rather than the city.
All right, so Ms. Salazar, in your opinion, kind of staying with Cigna is probably our best option moving forward. I mean, it could potentially cost us more in administrative fees based on the number of claims we have currently.
It would be based on our claims history. So again, the plan design that we have would be the same. The carrier, it's dependent on the plan that we have and our claims history. So that data doesn't change. And so it would be essentially, that's what they'd be evaluating, whether it was Cigna or another carrier.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Rivera, again, keep in mind, if we were to take the plan out to RFP, we're really negotiating the fixed costs. We're getting quotes on the fixed costs, which are the admin and the stop loss, which is roughly $1.9 million or 10% of the total cost. So even if we were able to achieve a 10% cost savings off of that piece, that's still only 1% of the overall pie.
All right, and then Ms. Salazar, I think in future or previous meetings that we've had, you talked about having more frequent communications both with the union and the governing body. Can you talk about that plan?
I think we've communicated a lot with the union, and I think providing monthly reports on how the plan is looking will be helpful when we have to decide to make changes. And then that will be the same for the governing body. So that way everyone has the same information kind of at real time, because if we do it monthly, we'll have a better idea of where we're at, and then we can make informed decisions as we need to moving forward. So we have the union has already proposed a date in July, but we're going to move to have the first meeting in June. So yes, we have already started those, and I will get on the schedule to present also for council, so you have the same information as well.
Okay, I think that's a great idea and a great plan moving forward. Also, can you talk about the advantages of switching to, I guess, a calendar year sign up for insurance versus the fiscal year we have now?
Yes, Councilor Rivera, I will talk about it from a timeline standpoint and how difficult it is to have the benefits committee meetings, process budget information, go through the hearings, and have open enrollment all by July 1st. It's a very condensed and abbreviated schedule. In my experience, there's a lot of local governments that do it on a calendar year basis. So they have the discussions through the budget process. They have educational sessions with employees. And then the open enrollment happens in the fall, like October, sometime in October, for an effective date of January 1st. So it gives a little more time to evaluate, educate, and implement.
And there's no problems with changing that now, even though we already have a contract with Cigna?
Councilor Rivera, we can change the plan year. My recommendation would be that we not skip the open enrollment for June. And the reason being is I think we do need to make some decisions now to make our plan more sustainable, but also to allow employees who may have missed an opportunity to sign up for benefits and who may have been, who may be, banking on the fact that we're going to have open enrollment for an effective date of July 1st to allow them the opportunity to sign up for benefits instead of waiting until January. I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you for that. And then if we went with option one, which is the least impact to employees, there's a chance that we could be in a situation where we're better off than we thought we were going to be. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Rivera, yes, and that would be great news because then that means that we would be building back up our fund balance to the goal that council members have discussed in the past of the $5 million. So that would be great news.
Right. There's also the chance we could be worse off, right?
Councilor Rivera, yes, that would be unfortunate, and that's where I believe Don was referring to on slide 5. If we went below that, then we would have to look for other city funding to fund our plan. So that's the con of depleting our fund balance.
Right. Okay, thank you. So, Mayor, if I can just end with a comment, and I said something similar at Public Works Committee, is that I'm in favor of option one. It's the least impactful to the employees, and I think moving forward through next fiscal year and the budget discussions that are going to happen, not hitting the employees hard with something similar or something as proposed like option two, I think that would be devastating. So option one, I think, is a smaller approach. It gives human resources, the unions, the governing body time to get monthly reports, as Ms. Salazar talked about, see where the plan is, see where we're going, see what kind of adjustments we need to make. It allows the unions the ability to have more participation in those discussions. And hopefully things go much better than they have been. But if not, we're in a better position, I think, to make decisions moving down the road. So I'm in favor of option one, and we'll support that. And thank you to Bernadette, Aon, the unions as well, who spoke at both finance and public works. This is not an easy decision for any of us. This is not something any of us wanted to do, but it would have come up whether COVID or the pandemic was here or not. I think that's an important thing to remember. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor. Thank you very much. And I'll wait to hear from my colleagues.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garcia, your hand was up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Salazar, and the Aon reps. Perfect timing, because I did have a question about slide number 5. So point of clarification, just because I noticed that in column B, items 5 through 13 are absent, whereas in prior presentations, there was that information. Has any of that data changed?
Maybe somebody from Aon could speak to column B on page 5, items 4 through 13 are.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia. So since the HR team was proposing that we move to option 1, we just cleared out the information that was in rows 5, below 5 and under. However, of the renewal increase, the city was looking, it's an increase of $1.8 million. The share to the city, your increase would be 1.45 million. So it's just taking a little bit up. The decision was made to remove that information since we were proposing moving to option number 1 for this presentation.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm whether or not that information changed, because it wasn't there in this presentation. And for the record, I just want to state, I think it's a great idea for us to move to a calendar year. I mean, I think it's, with, as Bernadette stated, it does get busy trying to be on a fiscal year, and with the committees having competing interests. Any reason besides lining up with the fiscal year why we had it that way in the past?
Councilor Garcia, I don't know, and perhaps Councilor Vigil-Koppler could answer, since she has some historic knowledge of the HR department, and perhaps Don has some insight as to why the city has remained on a fiscal year calendar, but I don't know, Councilor Garcia.
Okay. Well, I think we definitely need to, and I like to hear that we have the flexibility to move to a calendar year. When would we start having those discussions? I know that you had mentioned we don't want to interfere with open enrollment that might take place in the summer. Is there an option to allow, I guess, a waiver where folks can enroll still in the summer, and then we have open enrollment in the fall? How would that work out timeline wise?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia, so we would just need to do some planning around making that transition. What we would need to do is, because it impacts more than just your medical plan, we would need to look at, would you be wanting to move and change the plan year for any of your other benefits, so that way they would all remain on the same alignment. But what we would need to do is develop a course of action on determining how we would make this adjustment, how we would communicate it out to employees, and just set some timelines around that. So definitely want to offer an open enrollment, especially in light of COVID. You want to give employees an opportunity to enroll on your plan if they had previously waived it, or knowing that so many individuals' financial circumstances have changed, they may want to change to a different plan to help reduce their expenses. So I would definitely recommend maintaining the current open enrollment period to allow your employees to make those changes. Then what we would need to do is sit down and work with your HR team as well as Cigna to lay out the course of action and the steps we would need to change the plan year. And then by doing that, we would also want to open up a second open enrollment, which we can do that to give employees the chance to make elections later. The things that come up that can be concerning is for your flexible spending account, if that operates on a different timing than your medical plan, then we would need to do a short plan year and adjust the contract for that benefit to keep those aligned. And there's just some steps that we need to make sure that we go through to keep you in compliance with IRS regulations for allowing employees to take those deductions and use pre-tax dollars to cover out-of-pocket expenses under a flexible spending account. The other thing that we need to be cognizant of is on your core plan and your HRA plan, which you do have some enrollees on those plans, not a lot, but those plans do have deductibles, and those deductibles reset every July. So we would need to have some discussions on how we would address that under your plan for those employees on those plans, for how would we reset those and get those transitioned so they operate on a calendar year basis. So there's just a few things that we want to just discuss to account for how we communicate this to your employees, what changes we need to address, contract changes, and things to make sure you are in compliance with some of the IRS regulations that manage, pre-tax deductions and using pre-tax dollars.
So am I hearing you correctly that there is an option to have open enrollment this summer and a potential option for us to have move to a calendar year and have open enrollment again in the fall?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia, yes, we could definitely do that option, and we just need to lay down the steps and address the items that would need to be addressed to make that change. So it is something that can be accomplished.
Great. I definitely would like to see us set that as a target. If we could do that, I would highly support that. And so I definitely thank you for the information provided. I, as well as Councilor Rivera, do support option 1 more than option 2. I don't want to hit our employees in a time of need, given not only is we are in an economic crisis, but a health crisis, and having employees potentially having to endure higher out-of-pocket costs, that's just something we need to ensure we're not doing. So I don't want to pass that burden on to our fellow team members with the city. With that, thank you, Ms. Salazar, and the reps for Mayon. That's all the questions I have at the moment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilwoman Villarreal, your hand was up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping you could go back to the option 1 slide. And by the way, I watched your meeting. It was so much fun watching the Public Works meeting last night. I just wanted to understand better about how the breakdown would be for these options since they changed from the Finance Committee meeting. And what I think was helpful, Don, is you actually went through it a lot more in detail last night, and I felt like I had a better understanding. And now that I look at the breakdown of costs, actually, could you go to the breakdown of costs? So it didn't help me to not have that column of renewal put in place, the numbers, mostly because I see that as our third option. Like, I know that Councilor Garcia kept saying, well, we should have another option, and I agreed with him, but then I thought about it, and I was thinking renewal would be one option. The new option 1 would be the second option, and option 2 would be the third, really. So I guess I wanted to look at the renewal and understand it better about what the breakdown of the fund balance would be, but we don't have it here. So I'm going to go back and forth to these numbers. I guess what I would be helpful, Don, is to explain for option one from the numbers can be confusing because you have some of them looking like a deficit. But from my understanding of your conversation last night, the employer contribution increase offset that 1.198, the number for option one, that's the amount that we're going to cover. The employees, sorry, the employee contribution increase number, line item 12, that 368,000. That number,
Apologies.
can you tell me more about that number? That's not what the employees have to take on, right? That won't be taken from their biweekly payments. That's what we're offsetting as in the city's offsetting, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, that is actually correct. So what we're saying by this chart, and I'll break it down just looking at option C, which is column C, which is option number one that we're proposing to renew with. So the total plan costs are projected in row one. When we compare column C, row one, back to what you're paying today for your current plan year in row A, we're seeing that is an increase of 1.566 million. So this 21 million comes from what the employees contribute to through their paychecks and what the city funds through your funding. So when we look at how do we split up that 21 million, row 5, when we look at row 5 in column C, 5 million of that 21.533 million would come from your employees through their payroll deductions. That would be an increase of $368,000 compared to what they're paying in the 2019-2020 plan year. However, what we are proposing is that in light of the current situation, what you can do is use the fund balance to offset that increase to the employees. So that way their payroll deductions that they're paying today would not change. So really where we're showing this increase, it's going to be taken care of by that fund balance. And that's what we're showing down here. So the city's expense is in row 7. So looking at in the next plan year, you'd be paying 16.473 million. When we compare that back to the current plan year, it's an increase of $1,198,000. So what we've done starting on row 9 is taking the fund balance of 2.5 million. We subtract out the city's increase for the year, which is $1,198,000. So that leaves us a fund balance of 1.325 million. Then to not pass along a payroll contribution increase to the employees on top of the plan design changes, we'll use 368,000 of that fund balance. So that way we can keep the employees' payroll contributions the same as what they're paying today. So that would take that fund balance down to 957,000.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm confused why we utilize, like we have a fund balance, the city controls it, but yet we take out the employer contribution increase offset. Why do we do that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, the suggestion was due to the budget shortfall that the city was facing, so that we wouldn't have to look at other resources in the general fund, was to use that medical fund as an offset to handle this increase. You don't have to use the medical fund for that increase, but then you need to, then the city finance committee would need, or city finance team would need to find, another resource within the city's general fund to absorb that.
Essentially, we don't have funding for that. So we're taking
Yes.
from the fund balance to cover our contribution, the
Correct.
70+%, and then the employee contribution, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, that is exactly correct.
Okay. So I guess when I was watching last night for Public Works, I was confused because, you know, some counselors are like, well, let's just change this and change this little aspect. And I didn't think that we could pick and choose what we wanted to change based on our personal preference. What I wanted to see was like, why are these changes happening in terms of the copays, and how does it actually affect not just the bottom line, but did we decide those copay changes based on data? Like, what are the highest diagnosis claims that we have, and where might those increases happen over a period of time, and then use that data to inform us with the copays? I didn't see that at all. I haven't really seen any kind of breakdown of that. And that's been hard for me because I don't know if you all aren't getting the data from Cigna or what the situation is, but it helps to inform us if we have data to tell us why, what we see as a trend of the claims. And I know that we talked about that we got information in February that broke it down, but I looked at that and it was very minimal, the breakdowns. And I was thinking about, there was some kind of report back in 2015 that the previous insurance company gave us, or not us, I wasn't on the council yet, but it gave a breakdown of cost and utilization of by diagnosis group. And it really kind of broke down, like, what are we seeing as the main, like very comprehensively, what are the main costs that we're seeing happen with our insurance, and what are people using their insurances for, or the insurance for? So I don't feel like I've had that information. And that's what's frustrating, is like, I don't like to pick and choose and be like, I don't really like that copay, let's change that. I would rather have like an informed decision and be like, hey, this is what Cigna provided us. And I've never seen Cigna give us a comprehensive breakdown of those costs in terms of the highest claims that we have. Do we have that information? And I'm not talking about the February presentation, because that wasn't super helpful for me. That gave us minimal like line items of things that were things to note, but it didn't really give us a full picture. Do we have any more data?
So we don't have that in this presentation. There was in the Cigna data, it reviewed the large claimants, but when you look at pricing a health plan, and I'm going to go back to this change, is there's some actuarial models where you look at when you make a change to a copay, whether you raise it $5, $10, $20, there's a pricing model that our actuaries work through that develop the impact and show the changes. So last night there were some discussion around some of the benefits, and they felt a few of the copays were too high. We were able to run through a modeling. It was a very minimal impact. The one specific copay that was called out was in row 16, physical, speech, and occupational therapy. It was initially proposed at a $40 copay. By making a change to a reducing it to a $20 copay, it was a very minimal impact overall. It was like less than like a 0.1%. And so overall, it was about a $30,000 change to your total cost by making that change. So while we weren't, agree that it wasn't an opportunity to just pick and choose all these different things, but we took that feedback and looked at it and realized that when people are using those particular services, whether it's physical, speech, or occupational therapy, they are often having to go multiple times a week. And so having a $40 copay could be a financial burden to an employee. So
I totally understand that change. It made sense. I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'd rather us look at the full picture, not pick and choose like, I don't like how much it's increased, let's reduce it. And then we fudge the numbers again. I guess I wanted something more consistent, and this has changed pretty significantly since our finance options. And so I'm just trying to understand why, like what was it that made that change? I know you said discussions with union, but I also was like, can you just give me like, based on data, based on trends, based on the high diagnosis claims, these changes would have had the least impact. And I guess I don't see that. So it's hard for me to be like, huh, is option 1 good? I definitely don't think option 2 is good, but I'm just trying to understand how we make a decision. It also is based on, like you just said, we don't have another funding source to be able to cover our portion. So that's pretty clear. The only good thing I'm feeling okay about is that the biweekly amounts that we take from our employees is not going to change. But I didn't actually see, where's the projected increase into the insurance fund after the copay changes?
So it wouldn't be an increase to the insurance fund. Really what we're looking at is if we did not make any changes to the plan design, overall, the increase to the plan would be 1.876 million. And so with these copay changes, it's reducing the expense by $310,000. So the overall increase projected expense cost would go up 1.566 million. So then we're taking that increase and off using the fund balance of 2.54 million to offset that increase. That 1.566 million, that is the total of looking at row 6, what the employees share would be if we increase their contributions that they pay out of their biweekly checks, and row 8, what the share would be to the employer. So, so really it's just using that fund balance to absorb that increase. The challenge with looking at diagnosis codes is because the way the plans are structured is your copays are set up on general categories. So for instance, like if you have an inpatient hospital stay, it's a copay for that. It's not looking at a diagnostic category. So an inpatient hospital stay could be for a number of things. It could be for a pregnancy. It could be for someone who is terminally ill and they needed to be inpatient stay. So it's hard looking at and giving you diagnostic information to justify. What we do when our actuaries price this is they look at these bigger buckets and look at, okay, here's our spend on hospital care. So if we adjust the cost sharing in this manner, it will have this dollar amount impact overall to the plan dollars. It's just very difficult to pinpoint that because when you look at an inpatient hospital stay, it could be for a number of diagnostic reasons why they are in a hospital overnight. So it's really hard to pinpoint it down to say, okay, if somebody's hospitalized because they're a cancer patient, so we're going to increase that copay. We can't do it down to that level because that's not how plans are built and designed and managed in carrier systems. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity on why we can't give it tied back to a diagnostic category.
Well, I also think the other thing that's challenging is providers actually code things differently. And that also adjusts the way our claims come in, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, that is definitely true. And how a provider codes a visit can definitely impact how a claim is paid. So a prime example of this is you could go in for your annual colonoscopy. That's considered a preventive care service, so it should be covered 100% by the plan. However, if during that procedure that a provider finds polyps and removes polyps, it changes the coding they use when they bill that procedure. And oftentimes a provider will use a code that makes that a diagnostic procedure. So then it turns it into, okay, that becomes a cost sharing where the member may have some out of pocket. And so some of this is impacted by how a provider bills, and it could change what bucket it falls into.
Yeah, I think the same goes for the acupuncture, chiropractic, massage therapy, that combo that we initially had. I think it's good that we broke it up the way we're doing it now, because then that will be, I think, a more accurate way of looking at those services utilized. I think before it was a little bit skewed because it depends on the providers and how they code them. So I'm going to yield the floor for now. I have a couple more questions, but I'm going to regroup my thoughts here. Thank you.
We'll come back around. That's fine. Let's see, Councilwoman Vihel Coppler, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you. I'm going to echo Councilor Villarreal's comments in that, you know, and I did bring this up in Public Works. We haven't gotten a lot of information about the city's experience with claims and categorized by uses of the monies. So in my mind, if you don't know where you've been, you can't plan where you're going. And so when we're comparing everything here, and it's all very complicated, because I believe this has really been a moving target ever since the discussions began. You know, it's been frustrating because we have gotten these presentations time after time with changes, but no cover memo describing what the changes are. So we're left to fend for ourselves on our own when we don't really know, or at least I haven't known exactly what I'm comparing to from the last chart. And I will say again, an example of that is what I asked earlier is what's the difference between the 430 presentation we got and the one we're seeing today? So what's the point of sending it out again if there aren't changes? So, you know, it's all been a big moving target, and including, I think, the lack of guidance where in these committees we could have made changes and only one counselor got to make a change that made it through. I still don't understand how that's possible, although I do not disagree with the change. So, you know, I kind of feel a little bit in the back seat on this. But indeed, it has been a moving target and it has not helped to understand and grasp. But the biggest thing here is that we have had no data describing our experience. And especially where that's helpful is deciding where these deductibles increase, where these co-pays increase. Are we making them in the right changes? In the right places? I don't know. And I still to this day don't know why the speech, I know we talked about speech pathology, but it's in pathology, it's in items line 16 on this, what is it? Yeah, page 3. You know, somebody had information on that, but I don't know how many people use that. Why was it important to reduce it, which I agree with. But so my experience with any kind of plan here is that you take a look at where your money's going. And then if you feel, you know, under analysis that particular mishap needs an increase in a particular copay or percentage of payment, then you make those adjustments there and see where you're at. So I feel like this council really has been at a loss because we're missing a huge piece of information to make these decisions. It's really kind of at a whim. And I know that you're trying to make the funds solid, but it's not really reasonable to me, and I don't think to employees who will see these increases, that these aren't really based on real data that we've seen. Maybe you all have seen it, but we haven't seen it. And I really want to see it because I feel like I'm going to vote on something that I only really have half the cake on this. So the next thing I would like to bring up again, and it's neither here nor there right now, but I really don't like the idea that we are considering something this big, and we will every year, or maybe every so often. And when it was our time to go out to RFP, we didn't do it. And I know the first comment and reason when I asked this earlier was we didn't have the time or the staff. And now it's changed into, oh, well, you approved this contract 3 months ago or whatever. Well, that was because we didn't go out to bid. And so another piece of information is we can't even compare to other insurance plans, other providers of, helping us do this, consultants, or I don't even know what to call you, but we don't have that. So I won't belabor that, but in the future, I really think it's our fiduciary responsibility to go out to bid when it's time so that we can have comparisons. The other thing is that we did all receive a letter from all three unions saying that they weren't given ample time to comment, that it would be like a 3-day notice of these meetings. And I find that to be true because I saw it. But we've had several meetings on this, several advantages of having at least this information that we've been provided, albeit it's not always the same. But something that's complicated, it seems like in good faith, we would give ample notice and time and get this same information to the unions that we are responsible for providing information to, and that it be as detailed as this. So I do know that there have been some complaints that they haven't seen some of this in those meetings. And so I don't think we should shortchange any of the communication processes with the organizations that are our employees, with giving them lesser than what we get in information. It's just wrong, and it's not fair. The other thing I want to say is that the state has 2 open enrollments. So, it hasn't been a problem that I know of. That's the kind of system in my own insurance that I'm used to. Open enrollments twice a year. It provides for better planning, gives you a chance to look at your experience and where the money's going, and whether there are changes that need to be made based on real information. When Ms. Salazar referenced my name earlier when Councillor Garcia was asking questions, and I will say this, there was this kind of information. We did decide to self-insure at that point. We had our experience before us. We knew where the money should be increased and where it could be decreased. We knew where the deductibles should be increased or decreased, and we knew where co-pays should happen based on experience and the experience of our claims. So we're really missing a big thing here. But in response to the 2 open enrollments that the state has, and it seemed to work fine, I believe the city should move forward with open enrollment dates twice a year. And it certainly addresses what Ms. Montano said, and Ms. Salazar for sure, that employees don't want to miss an opportunity to change their plans in different ways. And so when employees get a chance to do that twice a year, it's even better. And it really does help with planning. So I think, my own opinion right here on this council tonight is that we are not ready to move forward. We don't have what we need to have to make this important decision. And because it was mentioned earlier that we're not doing this because of the 100 million shortfall, but we are doing this because it is a responsible thing to do. We need to study the plan. Well, we still have next month, but we also have an opportunity if we offered open enrollment now, because employees may be expecting to make changes, that we make a decision on this plan within the next 6 months, and that we get the information we need, keep this information and update it because it's very valuable, but really create a plan that addresses real numbers and real issues. And so I don't have a problem with option one, but at the same time, I don't even know if these numbers match anything that's happening in our real world of experience with the city claims. So I don't think that we're ready to undertake this until we have that big piece of the pie that's missing in information. So those are my comments, and I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Let's see. Councilor Romero Worth, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't even know really where to start. I too watched the presentation last night on YouTube of the Public Utilities Committee and this presentation. I also sit on the Finance Committee and heard the presentation there. I have also heard this presentation at least 1 or 2 other times in prior years. So I understand when Councilor Rivera says, you know, there has been issues with this plan prior to this crisis. And I think, you know, it's not, I guess and I don't know who I asked this of, Bern, whether you want to answer it or whether our consultant wants to answer it, but we need design changes to our plan because our plan right now is not sustainable. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, yes, that's correct. I think the city has struggled with plan design changes for several years, so you're absolutely correct.
So, and now, you know, okay, so I guess I want to say a couple things up front. One, I don't disagree with Councilor Rivera's point about, you know, option one may be the best thing that we have going for us now. But I guess I want to pull back and say, all right, now we're in a budget crisis. We have $100 million deficit. We have a plan that we know historically is not sustainable. And I think part of the reason we have option two was at finance, we wanted to understand where our plan was in relation to other plans. And so one barometer of that was to show what the state does. And so from option one and option two and where we are now, we can see this plan that we have is very generous. Bern, is that true?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, yes, that's true. In comparison to the state, the county, and other local governments within the state, it's a very generous plan.
And so it's a very generous plan. It's basically unsustainable. We have to make design changes. And I agree right now, you know, in this health crisis, I think we need to be minimalists in what we do to that. But going forward, it really does concern me that what we're doing to the medical fund balance, because if we're going into if we're in a fiscal crisis, we may not have the general fund necessary to lean on if we don't have this medical fund. And I don't know, is Mary on the call?
Yes, I am.
Mary, can you give us a sense of, like, you know, where our revenues are and where, I mean, are we going to be able, if we don't have this medical fund, are we going to be able to lean on the general fund to dig us out?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, at this point, we are looking to dip into our general fund reserves to be able to balance the revenue declines in the current fiscal year. while still remaining at a reserve level going into FY21. However, the point that you are making is absolutely correct. If we draw down on any of our fund balances in the current year or in FY21 or 22, as we expect the duration of this financial crisis to extend 5 to 6 years, going forward, we will not have those balances to rely on in future years. So what the options that are presented tonight for the medical benefit option 1 is showing is to fund the increases for the plan out of the health fund reserves for both the employee portion as well as the employer portion. So that combined will reduce the balances for the health fund going into next year, going into FY21. So if next year at this time, we are facing another $2 million deficit, we will be restricted in the amount that we can pull out of the fund, the health fund. And we will have to rely on other revenue sources or cut back or reduce other expenditures in our budget to be able to support the shortfall of the medical plan.
Okay, and I think that's helpful. And I know, Bern, you're talking about updating every month the benefits committee and the council as to how our claims are doing. If you do that and we see that our claims are high and are going to exceed our revenues on the track that they're on, can we make plan design changes mid-year?
Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, we can make plan design changes for an open enrollment period. So that would be the timeframe that we discussed earlier for a January 1st effective date. So between now and fall time, we can evaluate our claims and then determine, do we need to make more adjustments? How are we doing? And then those changes would be effective January 1st.
And how many open enrollments a year do we have?
Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, we currently only have one.
So generally, and that's in October?
The open enrollment period is in June for an effective date of July 1st.
Okay, and now we're talking about doing an open enrollment in October that would be effective in January. Besides this, so I'm sorry. So part of the reason why we're in a hurry to get is that we have an open enrollment that starts in June, which is next week, and then that would be in effect July 1st, and we could potentially have another open enrollment in October to be in effect January 1st. Am I getting that right?
Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so and that would allow us to see how we're doing, because we could be in a world of hurt, right? I mean, if we're using our fund balance now to dig us out of where we are right now, and then we're also, we're in this $100 million budget deficit, and we don't have, and we don't have general fund money to lean on the next time around, and we have no medical fund balance to lean on. The only thing we can do is make changes to the plan. Am I getting that right?
Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, yes. And if we're in a deficit the way we are now, we'll have to figure out a way to make up that shortfall, which, as Mary just described, would be reducing other expenditures if our total fund balance is depleted.
I remember at finance, I learned that, and this is probably for the consultant, in other places around the country, you don't see the setup we have now with different plans for different populations. Is that true? Like, so that we have, I guess we have a plan for fire and a plan for non-union and AFSCME and police.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, that is correct. It's not common that we see different plan designs for different classes of employees. Your situation is a little bit unique, but it is also governed by some of the collective bargaining agreement restrictions that you have with your union. So that is where the need for the separate plans came from.
Okay. And so, I mean, I don't know, it concerns me. I think, you know, I agree that COVID didn't cause this problem. But the problem that COVID did cause for our regular budget is probably going to necessitate that down the road, we have to do something to make this a more sustainable insurance plan. Does anybody want to confirm that thought?
Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, I agree with you, and I confirm that that's the case. Yes.
All right, but so again, tonight, option one, you know, we would use our fund balance. We're not going to have, you know, we're gonna not change the plan too much so that our, you know, so again, that we are thinking about our employees and this public health crisis and realizing the importance of this health insurance plan during this crisis. But I think we all need to realize that we're going to have to do something down the road to fix this, because I don't think we can sustain it. I don't think we can afford it. That was true before the pandemic, and it's going to be even more true as we deal with the budget deficit we have, and as we go forward in the years to come, trying to rebuild what's happened as a result of the fiscal crisis caused by this pandemic. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Of those who have not yet had a chance to speak, Counselor Cassett Sanchez, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And thank you to my fellow counselors who really have been doing a great job digging into a lot of the issues that we're facing. You know, as has been said, COVID did not cause the impetus to make changes to this plan. But I don't think that we can ignore that we are in the middle of a pandemic and we're talking about our health insurance. So I would like to hear how potentially COVID might be impacting our claims, our claim payout, what we might be seeing as a result of this. I know it is still early, things are still developing. But if there is some insight on what we could guess the impact would be, I would love to hear more about that.
Mayor, Councilor Cassett Sanchez. So based on the governor's orders, the number of claims that we're seeing on a weekly basis are reduced. However, we have seen a couple of high claimants over the course of the last few weeks, and they're primarily cancer claims that are, again, high claimants, where those services will continue and have continued during this pandemic. So even though we have lesser claims over the course of the last few weeks, we still have some of those large claimants where those services are still being offered. The other thing that we need to consider is because a lot of these services were kind of postponed, rescheduled, we're going to probably see, and Don or Todd can add to this, probably see an influx of claims as things start opening up. So our claims will probably increase as more procedures and more things are opening up. One thing I'd like to add is that Cigna offered an option for self-insured plans to cover at 100% any COVID testing or COVID office visits, and the city opted to provide that benefit to employees to reduce the spread in our community. So we're part of that opt-in program with Cigna where we would be covering those costs just as an added measure to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in our community.
And Mr. Mayor, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, what our actuaries and nationally what actuaries have seen and predicted is that we'll see a decrease in claims of 20 to 30% starting in April and probably carrying through June. And as restrictions are lifted, that those claims that were subdued for the most part will return either this summer or in the fall, depending on when restrictions are lifted and if they're back in place at any point if COVID cases increase again.
Okay, thank you. So that's what I expected to hear, is that claims are going to be reduced right now, and then we are probably going to be facing them in the next fiscal year when they will be coming through. Also, Bern, can you elaborate a little bit more? So you mentioned we took up the option to pay COVID testing and office visits at 100%. So that means if that individuals are going to get tested for COVID, any of our employees are going to get tested for COVID, or they are going to the doctor for COVID treatment, that they will not, what do you mean by visits to the doctor?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, that benefit is for COVID-related office visits, and that was part of the enhanced benefit for this pandemic.
Okay, so those will be paid 100%, and not, our employees will not be paying any co-pays for those office COVID-related visits, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You know, my other question has to do with some of the projections that we previously had from Aon. So we were looking at I believe it was I'm sorry, I don't have the slide up, the 9% change in our costs, correct? And this was a change that was predicted before COVID. Do we see COVID impacting that percent change, you know, in our benefits? Are those estimates still correct, is essentially what I'm asking.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, that final projection of 9.4% was based on claims through the end of March. So at the beginning of the pandemic, our actuarial analysts have recommended that we not use claims post March 31st, as again, they'll be suppressed for a few months, and then the subdued claims will reoccur later in the year. So yeah, I think it is still fairly accurate. Again, we expect to see lower claims in the second quarter of this year and increased claims in third and fourth quarter for those claims that were repressed. Okay,
so kind of a little bit of the Wild West in terms of predicting what the world looks like right now, which makes sense. You know, I guess really what I'm thinking about again is that fund balance, and how do we, you know, as Councilor Romero-Worth laid out, that we really don't have any other options after we deplete that fund balance, if we do deplete that fund balance. And hopefully, as Councilor Rivera mentioned, maybe we'll have a better than expected year, in which case it would go up, but it's also as likely, if not more likely, that we will not have a better year, and that we will deplete that fund balance. I also agree with what many of my fellow councilors have said, that we would like to essentially reduce the economic impact on our employees as we look at making these changes. But when we look at the facts and the numbers, our current plan is unsustainable. What I will say is that, you know, looking at what this presentation looked like at the beginning and to now, there are a few things that I am happy that we are exploring, such as we do not have a deductible with this plan still, which I know can be such a large barrier for families. So I really do appreciate that. And I also saw that we took virtual and telehealth down to, we pay 100% of that visit, which given the current times, I also really appreciate attention to that detail. I do also echo the the concerns from Councilor Villarreal and Councilor Vihel Koppler about the lack of data. This is also something that I would really like to see, and that as we move forward with those monthly meetings, I think really seeing a breakdown of those claims will be much appreciated and will give us a very good picture. And I would also be in favor of moving forward to that calendar year. I think it makes the most sense in terms of allowing families to plan, be able to compare the options that they have with either the exchange or with other plans that might be available through somebody else being employed. So I am in support of option one. I know that it is a bit of a financial risk for the city given the current situation, but also I would like to we'd like to protect our employees. And if we can get away with option one, I would like to be able to do that. But I also would be in favor of continuing to monitor this, revisiting with an open enrollment in the fall. And as Councilor Romero-Worth said, looking at, are we on track or are we really putting ourselves into a world of hurt? And I think that'll be really important for us to look at, and we may actually have a better view of what our financials look like at that time. So monthly meetings, I'm really looking forward to them. I'm also, really happy to hear that the benefits committee will be having monthly meetings as well. And I look forward to hearing on reports from those. So thank you. And with that, I will yield the camera.
Thank you for the camera coming back. I've not heard that one before. Yield the camera. Let's see. Of those who have not yet spoken, Councilor Lindell, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor. Could we go to the slide showing the two plans and how that uses the reserve? Yeah, that one right there. Thank you. So we have a balance right now of 6.2. We're going to take that very shortly down to 2.5. We were just talking about high cost claims. Can you give us an example? Doesn't have to be exact, just an example of maybe 3 of our highest cost claims, what they've been?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Lindell, let me pull up a report. Your high cost claimants are typical of pretty much every employee's or public entity's high cost claimants. 3 of your top 4 are cancers, one a leukemia, the other a breast and stomach cancer. You have an end-stage renal disease, so that's a person who's on dialysis. That typically runs between $300,000 and $400,000 a year. And you've got actually a 4th cancer. So 4 of your top 5 are cancer. The other is an end-stage renal disease. But also keep in mind you have stop loss coverage. So after $250,000, Cigna pays these amounts. All 5 of those through the first 9 months of the year have exceeded that $250,000 threshold.
Okay, so that's $1.25 million, $1,250,000. So even if we support option 1, we're going to come up, and we don't know what happens. We could have 2 of those awful situations next year, and we could have 7 of them. But in looking at option 1, with a fund balance at the end of the year of $957,000, that's not enough fund balance to cover that. And what everybody listening to this knows is medical costs are not going down, they're going up. My question is, so partway through the year, we totally and completely exhaust our balance. We have absolutely no reserves whatsoever. In fact, we've hypothetically spent our reserves and we owe $500,000. How do we pay that $500,000?
Well, I think that's where on the bulleted list on that slide 5 is if we run short, if we have another bad year, that's where we would have to look for other funding sources within the city and to fund the plan. That's one of the cons of depleting a fund balance to the level of where we're at now.
So do employees increase their contribution at the same proportion that the city, also known as taxpayers, increase their proportion? Is that how we come up with meeting the bills that we would owe?
Mayor, Councilor Vandal, that's a really good question. The collective bargaining agreements that we have right now, they all specify the breakdown of contributions. So that would require negotiations with the unions, which is something that I really do believe we should be discussing during these monthly meetings. But it would require negotiations with all 3 of our bargaining units as they have that language included in all of their agreements.
Okay, I just, you know, we've drained this fund balance. I don't know if you can talk about what the fund balance started out at the beginning of, say, the last 5 years. And if you can't, that's all right, because we have a pretty dramatic example in front of us. 6.2 went this year to 2.5. That's 4 million. And in the option that we're looking at, we only have 957,000. This is a very, very risky thing to do fiscally. I'm willing to support option 1, but hopefully, and I wish it for the individuals also, of course. We get some renal failure, we get some cancer, we have people that work for the city that have a newborn that needs hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical care. We've drained this fund down to a very risky level. And someday we will have to pay to build it back up. I see these options as, I know they're what people want today, but we are clearly kicking the can down the road. And I think fiscally it's very, very risky. So I will yield, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Also, not yet having spoken is Councillor Abeta.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the beginning, I have advocated for a plan that mirrors the state or the county, because in my mind, we are dealing with taxpayer money. And for me, it's always been a question of how much taxpayer money are we willing to continue to put towards a health insurance plan that we've been told, at least I've been told since I've gotten on the council, that isn't solvent, and the day was going to come. But given what's been presented over the past few weeks of the different committees and the discussions I've heard from not only our consultants, but the unions and the counselors during these committee meetings, I'm willing to support option 1 this evening. But I am I am concerned that we may land up with a plan that is more closely to option 2 when it's all said and done. But I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and that with the information we start to get every month, as we're being told, we share that with the unions and all of the interested parties, and maybe it'll trend the other way for a change. But well, I'll just leave it at that. I'll be optimistic and say maybe it'll trend the other way. I'll go with option 1 this evening. As far as the occupational therapy and speech change, we have been given the breakdown at every single presentation we've had. It's, in fact, one of my complaints has been, why do we have so much information? We have co-payments, we have this payment, and so I thought, well, I'll start looking at them. Maybe that's why it's being presented to us. And I saw that our existing plan for occupational therapy and speech, there is no co-payment. And what was being proposed was $40. And because I happen to work in a field that serves children, I know of a lot of children who have to get speech and occupational therapy. I mean, they leave our Boys and Girls Club early because they have an appointment. Some have multiple appointments weekly. And so when I just looked at it yesterday, I said, wow, that's $80 per child a week for some parents. And so I just thought that was kind of steep. So at Public Works, I said, can you take a look at this? And I'm glad that Aon did. And it sounds to me like it's a minimal cost to us, but it's a huge cost to parents if we kept it at $40 per visit. I didn't know we weren't allowed to make suggestions, or maybe we were, but to me, I just thought it's in front of me. We're at committee, and I'm gonna suggest it, and so I did. I just would agree with everything else that's already been said, Mayor, and I will support option 1 at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Let's see, we have Councillor Garcia's hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to kind of go back to slide 5, which we're on, and I'm referring back to the presentation that was given yesterday. And just for clarification, so the numbers are different. The numbers are higher in the plan presented to us today versus yesterday. What is the reason for the increase?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Garcia, the reason for the difference in the numbers going up was the adjustment in the benefit to the physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy categories. So to adjust for reducing that copay from $40 down to $20, it means that the plan would pick up more of the expense for the cost of those claims. And so that accounted for the increase.
Okay. Because I know that a comment was made earlier in regards to what's the difference of the presentations versus what was given yesterday, what was given to us at 4:30 p.m. And that was one change that I noticed. Were there any other changes made in the presentation besides column C?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Garcia, that was the only change that was made to the plan design in option number 1 from last night's presentation. There have been other copay changes based on comments made at the other committee meetings that we've presented to, where there were concerns that certain copays were too high. Changes were made based on feedback from the unions. And so, this plan has morphed into this based on feedback that we've gotten every time we've made this presentation. And that's why we've seen some of these changes happen. For instance, inpatient hospital care, the first time we presented this, that copay was at $1,000. And based on feedback and concerns that were made during all the presentations, it has been slowly cut back to a $350 copayment. And that's where it's been landed upon today. So it's just, some of these changes have been made based on comments made by the union, brought forth during the finance committee presentations, our meetings with the union, the public works presentation last night. So all those things have brought us to what we presented today.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the clarification. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Villarreal, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to follow up with a couple more questions. And for those of you, it's not that we don't understand this, that we have a situation with a plan that's not sustainable. That's why I wanted data to back up the way we adjusted the co-pays and different options. And sure, we care about, speech therapy. I just wanted to know, like, how many people utilize our benefit for that purpose? And among others, that's just one of many. That was why I wanted data to back it up. I'm curious, I don't know if Bern, I had asked you this before, but could you remind me, you said we don't always offset the employee contribution costs in their biweekly deductions, is that correct?
Councilor Villarreal, last year when we did the premium rate increases, we did not use reserve fund balances to do that. In previous years, I wasn't here, but according to the documentation that I've seen that council has approved, they have essentially used the fund balance to pay for the increase both on the employer side and the employee side.
Right.
So it, based on the research, last year was the first year we did not do that. So yes.
We had a little uptick in the biweekly deductions, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, last year we did have I think it was a little over 9% increase.
Okay, so what I was wondering is, and this was like another option I wanted to see or consider, did we ask union reps or even non-union employees about the possibility of having a premium increase so that that increase would actually increase our fund balance and it wouldn't decrease it in these options that were being presented right now?
The resolution that outlines the tasks for the benefits committee meeting advisory group spells out what those duties are. So we did not go out to non-union employees to ask whether a premium rate increase is something that they would consider. However, as Todd mentioned earlier, in order to build the fund balance, it would be more than what the recommended 9.4% would be to sustain or build our fund balance. So we did not have those discussions, but it would actually be more than the 9.4% increase. Additionally, by just keeping the plan the same, we would still have the problems that we have now where it's not a sustainable plan because of the level of benefits that we offer.
So are you saying that if we would have allowed to have premium increases with the current plan, that wasn't going to help the fund balance and our sustainability of this particular health insurance plan?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, the increase that was proposed in the 9.4% increase that was the renewal rate was
Right.
just to break even. So it would not build or it would hopefully break even. That's if we didn't have, a couple of really catastrophic situations within the plan year. So that would be to get us to a break even point. But again, based on the level of benefits that we offer, it would not sustain our plan.
So that column, even though we don't see it in front of us, that's taking into account that we actually were not offsetting the employee contribution increases.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, if we had applied the 9.4% increase to both the city share and the employees share, then the balance numbers off to the right in the purple box, it's a coin flip, but that's essentially, there's no margin built into it, but essentially those numbers off to the right wouldn't change if everything went perfectly, and there would be a $4.2 million fund balance with 1.7 million of that set aside for IBNR. So yes, it would have, there would not have been any reduction in the fund balance if we applied that increase to both city and employees.
So could we have thought or looked at, like, say, option 1, but then also having the contributions not be offset?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, yes, so if we increase both parties' shares 7.8%, we would also arrive at the purple box off to the right.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, I will say though, if we were to do that, we'd have to look for the amount of, where is it? The 1.1 million, almost 1.2 million from another source during this pandemic and budget crisis that we're in. So that would still be an increase to the city's budget.
I don't understand that, because I feel like the contributions that we'd be getting from employees from those increased premiums would increase our fund balance that we could use. I guess I'm thinking more about employee contribution increase offset specifically.
So the increase that employees, if the increase of the 7.8% on row 3 under option 1 was pushed over to the employees' biweekly contributions, that's $368,000 that the employees would contribute. The city is still responsible for the 1.1, almost 1.2 million that we would have to, so if we're not using fund balance for that, we need to find another source of funding for that, city funding, which is going to be very challenging during this budget crisis that we're in.
So I guess I understand that. That makes sense to me, because we don't have any other revenue source. But were we doing the offset for employees as well, just to kind of make it equitable? Like we're covering both the employee contribution offsets, increase offsets, and the employer and the employee contribution offsets, so that it would be equal. I don't know what other word to find. I'm just trying to understand, like, if employees wanted to, if they were okay with the premium increase, if it would help us to, like, not reduce our fund balance as much as it is.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, certainly the union leadership could come forward and say we're interested in having the biweekly deductions come from our paychecks to help with the fund balance. I think when we were evaluating all these options and taking into consideration all the comments and concerns with all the union discussions, committee discussions, and our trend history, we are trying to have that balance of, okay, our co-pays are increasing in some areas. What can we do to minimize the impact to employees, especially during this situation? And as the union mentioned, many of our employees are furloughed right now. So we also took that into consideration. And so not applying a premium rate increase on a biweekly basis would be beneficial to all city employees who have city benefits at this time. And the co-pays, the increase in co-pays may or may not impact every single employee who has benefits. So we are trying to figure out the option that would provide the least financial hardship to our employees while still trying to achieve some savings to help be in the right direction to sustain our plan.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. I guess moving forward, I really do think we just have to go back, especially in the fall, to reevaluate the insurance plans and get more feedback. Do we have a representative for non-union folks, non-union employees that comes to the table? as well? Just curious.
Yeah, Rael, the other members on the Insurance Benefits Committee are finance staff and HR staff.
But directors, you said.
No, not necessarily. So we do have members of the budget team that are involved, and Mary McCoy is part of the team as am I, but we
Right.
do have staff members that are part of the team.
Okay, thank you. The other thing that we had talked about in finance is, and I want us to consider and really dig in, and that requires a lot of heavy lifting from HR and also from the unions to start plugging into looking at options of the tiered premium plan that's based on the annual salaries of our employees. I really want to look at that, what that option would bring to us. Like the state does, it doesn't necessarily even have to have the breakdown that you had told me, Director Salazar, that they have a 60-40 percentage breakdown, but maybe using our percentages and looking at a tiered premium plan. So that's what I'd like us to do. I want those meetings to happen that are monthly. And also I'm in favor of changing the time frame of our plan, the enrollment to be annual instead of by fiscal year. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Vihel Coppler, your hand is up.
Not again.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just want to go back and state that I'm not opposed to this proposal. All of the comments I made previously were to hopefully improve upon our decision-making by having more data-driven information to compare, and I think that's really important. We don't have it today, but I would like to see it in the future. And I do look forward to these monthly meetings to see what our experience is and what we have. And I think, at the end, when we're ready to do this again, on a big scale, we would have the information we need to make a good, sound decision. And so I wanted to go to Bernadette's memo that we got at 4:30, and Bernadette, I see you're still on the last page. Oh, shoot. You state that we can, that it appears you're in agreement that we can explore shifting to a calendar year rather than a fiscal year schedule if we approve the plan, as it's been designed. Is that still your sentiment?
Counselor Vihel Coppler, yes, so I recommend that we continue with the open enrollment now in June and get a decision on the options presented tonight, and then look at the possibility of doing another open enrollment in the fall for an effective date of January 1st. So
in considering any motion tonight, would it be to your agreement that we approve option 1 and continue with this open enrollment we have in June and approve another open enrollment in the fall? Would you have any opposition to that? Or can you tell me what, if you're not in agreement, what would be the detriment?
Counselor Vihel Coppler, I think based on the information that Ms. Montano presented earlier, sorting out the details of employees who are on the core plan and how deductibles might affect them, and how we can work out those arrangements. I don't want to negatively affect employees who are on those plans. Again, there's limited number of employees, but we want to do our best to minimize the financial impact to them. So I think sorting out those details before making a commitment tonight, I would like to have the opportunity to do that first and then provide more details about how that will work. And I believe that the timeframe that we're in allows us time to do that because we wouldn't have to necessarily make that decision tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you, Counselor. If there are no other comments, no other discussion, is there a motion to put before the governing body?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve option 1 as presented by Human Resources and Aon.
Okay, and I think it's fair to note, as we just heard from several of the counselors, that some of the items in the memo that was distributed later this afternoon regarding topics that have been surfaced, including another round of enrollment, including a shift to a calendar year, staggering the benefits by pay in a way that we look at the state's model. I think all of those don't need to be in the motion, but I think the record will show there's a lot of interest in pursuing those going forward. So we have a motion from Councilor Rivera. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Cassett Sanchez. Could the clerk call the roll at this point?
Yes, Councilor Vihel-Coppler,
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal,
Reluctantly, yes.
Councilor Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
thank you. I want to thank the Aon representatives as well as Bernadette and her team and Mary McCoy for being here tonight, as well as the very, very thorough discussion. I think we all acknowledge that we're in territory where we're trying to balance several different factors. We want to maintain our fiscal integrity. We want to be very careful how our employees are impacted, particularly in a period of a global pandemic, as well as a financial emergency. So we all know we'll be, according to what Bernadette said over and over again and consistently has maintained, that we'll be monitoring this. There will be regular reports back to the governing body. There will be additional data supplied. There will be regular meetings with the committee to bring people up to speed and listen to proposals going forward. It is a calculated risk, but I think we are in a very unusual and unprecedented situation where some risks are worth taking, because to do otherwise is to really do too much harm to people's lives. So I thought it was a very constructive conversation and very productive. And I'm very appreciative to everybody on the governing body, as well as the staff work that it took to get us to this point tonight, as well as the participation of the unions. As Councilor Rivera mentioned, their commentary at both the committees was very constructive. Let's see, we have now, are there matters from the city manager that you would like to bring to our attention, city manager?
Mayor, councilors, I have no matters at this time. Thank you.
Matters from the city attorney?
Mayor, I also do not have additional matters tonight.
Matters from our city clerk?
I have none. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Communications from the governing body. I'll look at the map in front of me and start, and we'll just go across. Councilor Vihel-Coppler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to give a big shout out to the Public Works employees and the fire department firefighters who assisted with hanging the banners, the veterans banners, You know, they did a tremendous job. They got up very early and took the time to show the respect in hanging those banners. And the veterans I know in the city or and elsewhere, because we have some that are not just Santa Fe veterans, but they're all very appreciative. And I want to just say that this is something that the city can be very proud of. I encourage you to drive down Cereus Road from the intersection of Rodeo Road and Airport Road and go south all the way under the I-25 interchange and turn around somewhere over there at the stoplight and come and see the veterans that are the other side, because they're on both sides of Cereus Road. And I think that the police officers, because I saw several when I was driving, can be, and I think they're very appreciative for these banners, because I'll tell you, the traffic sure is slowing down on that section because people are looking at the faces, they're trying to see the names, and they just look so patriotic, and the veterans really do deserve all of this attention, which we have received newspaper print. We've received at least two TV stations that I know of. It's gotten a lot of, you know, the city's gotten a lot of accolades for doing this. We are still the only city in New Mexico that has done this, although we have had inquiries from other cities in New Mexico and even out of state. But we're still the only one, and I'm very proud to have sponsored this whole wonderful feel-good thing that we really need right now. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you enough about how the veterans have contacted me, have contacted Don Christie, who also deserves a wonderful thank you for his work. You know, Don Christie is a former police officer. I worked with him when I was working at this city before, and he's also an Air Force veteran. And he has just done yeoman's work in gathering everything that needed to happen for this. And I thank the counselors for supporting this initiative. In the beginning, it wasn't so going because I don't think we understood it as well, but now we see it come to fruition, and I think it's something we can all be proud of. So again, please take the time to drive down Cereus Road and see what has happened. It's really marvelous. So that's what I have, and I thank you.
Thank you. And I will second your words. You're absolutely right. It's a beautiful sight. Councilor Villarreal, you have the floor. You have the camera.
Thank you. I don't really have anything other than the introduction of one of two ordinances that myself and Councilwoman Lindell and Councilwoman Romero Worth are co-sponsoring together. And I don't know if you all are okay with me reading one of them and then maybe someone takes on the other one. That's okay with my colleagues. I can't see you, but I'm going to say you're saying okay. We're introducing an ordinance amending section 14-6.2 of our code to adopt an ordinance, a maximum of 1,000 short-term rental permits in the city, to prospectively limit the number of short-term rental permits to one per natural person, to prospectively limit the proximity of short-term rental units on residentially zoned property, to require a local operator for short-term rental units to adopt record keeping and reporting for short-term rental units and host platforms, and to clarify other provisions of the short-term rental ordinance. And I'm sorry, Mayor Weber, you are also part of this. I'm sorry to not include you, but I was looking at the introduction sheet and it was under your name. So I am sorry, but just wanted to read one of them. And it's also part of your work in this. And we're excited to be able to go through committee and have good discussions on this. And I'll let my colleagues read the other one, or the mayor can read the other one. Thank you.
Councilor. Yes. Councilor Garcia, you are in the next square on Hollywood Squares tonight. You have the camera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Yolanda first for setting up the Spread Some Sunshine Fund. We're looking forward to donating some resources towards that. Secondly, as you guys noticed, I've got a picture behind me. I'm going to have some fun with our virtual meetings, take you on a tour of District 2, so to speak. As you can see behind me is the Chamisa bike path. Given that it's bike month, I figured, hey, let's show a picture of the Chamisa Trail. So as we continue to have these virtual meetings, I'll be taking you guys on a virtual tour of District 2 and all the great locations so you guys can see how awesome our district is. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all, and I hope you got there safe.
Could you show us your tennis shoes?
I'm not wearing sneakers today. I wish I was.
All right. I thought it might go with the bike trail theme, but no sneakers tonight. All right.
No, next time.
You're off the hook then. Councilor Abeta, you're next in the line.
Thank you, Mayor. I saw a press release about land use and their online rules and permits and payments that they're starting to take. And I think that's great that we're doing that. I would encourage the other city departments and services to go there as quick as we can. That's one place we were headed anyways, but I think as a country and given what we're dealing with, contactless transactions are going to become the new norm. And so congratulations to land use and IT for doing that. I look forward to other departments going that way. I want to say thank you to our fire and police departments. I attended the graduation parade that was down Jaguar Drive on Friday evening, and it was great that we were able to pull that off for the community and for these graduates. I mean, they didn't get to experience graduation the way the rest of us did, but I thought it was a great community show of support, especially here on the South Side. So I want to thank our fire and police for leading that on Friday. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Romero Worth, you are next in line.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything tonight. Very much look forward, though, to your reading the second of the two short-term rental bills that we're introducing tonight, and look forward to the meetings on that and hearing from other councilors and the community about the changes that we're proposing to help with the issues that have been caused in neighborhoods as a result of that industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cassett Sanchez, you have the camera or the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have anything quite new to say. I feel like a bit of a broken record, but I still just want to thank the citizens of Santa Fe for how incredibly dedicated everybody has been during the pandemic. I think that everyone's getting a little bit stir crazy, but I was walking around my neighborhood the other day and I overheard some gentleman on the phone. I apologize for my neighbor who I overheard your conversation, but he was telling somebody how seriously Santa Fe is taking it. And I think that he had just come from Texas, and he was saying, it's amazing. Everybody here is wearing masks and everybody is staying away from each other. And so thank you again for continuing to really toe the line and make sure that we are safely reopening. I know that we are all eager to get out there, but taking those precautions, I really just can't express how grateful I am that we have a community that's willing to come together to make sure we're all safe. So that's all.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'm introducing a resolution authorizing the sale of potable water to treated effluent customers in the event reclaimed treated effluent is not available, directing the city to pursue alternative methods and actions to increase robustness and dependability of non-potable water sources. So that'll be moving through the system. I also wanted to give my daughter a huge shout out. She graduated from the master's program this year. We did have a parade for her in front of my house. So we stayed in the front, cars drove by, family and friends. It was a pretty good turnout. It was a decent way to celebrate, considering we couldn't do the traditional methods. We were supposed to leave tomorrow for California and be hanging out in a beach house and then go to Disneyland for a couple days, but that's what this pandemic has done. So I want to give a shout out to not only my daughter, but all the graduates who have had to make adjustments to the way that they had hoped to celebrate such a huge accomplishment, and just give them all the props and love that they deserve for doing such a great thing. I'll also echo what Councilor Vihel Koppler said, and I think just get us ready for the fact that this program with veterans is getting bigger. Surreal Road on both sides of the street, from airport all the way to the interstate, are covered completely with veterans banners. So there are tons more people that want to put up a banner for a father or grandfather, someone who serves. So this program's growing. We're going to have to figure out which direction to go in next, but it's extremely popular. So thanks again to the city crews that helped put those up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Lindell, you have the floor next.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a dog park reference citation that we need to take care of. It's changing from section 5-7.44 to 5-7.6. That's it's essentially a typo that was in the ordinance, so we need to correct that. That's all I have, other than a huge congratulations to the young folks graduating from high school or college, or completing whatever studies they set out on. Graduations are so fun and so great. I'm so sorry we aren't having those parties this year. I always love going to those. So congratulations, it's a big accomplishment, and we'll look forward to your next graduation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. A couple quick items. We took care of the resolution extending the state of emergency tonight that was introduced and voted on. As noted by my colleague, Councilor Villarreal, there are two companion ordinances with Councilors Lindell and Romero Worth revolving around short-term rentals. The second one is an ordinance amending section 14-11.4 of the Land Development Code to adopt penalty provisions, civil fine schedule, and civil citation procedures for land use code enforcement actions, to permit the land use director to order a 1-year waiting period for application for short-term rental permit by a person who has violated the short-term rental ordinance. This is just the beginning of a community-wide conversation about something that a great number of people care about, and will be moving its way not only through committees, but first the Planning Commission. It'll get a lot of community conversation and input, but we wanted to get this moving forward so we can attend to it before the short-term rental industry, as Councilor Romero Worth referred to it, begins to pick up, and we have not attended to some of the issues that were pointed out earlier when a study was done about lack of, we were leaving money on the table, something we can ill afford to do now. We were letting enforcement drift, something we can ill afford to do, and other provisions designed to be much more up to date with how the short-term rental industry has evolved over time. So that will be open for conversation. I want to point out that voting has started, and we all know as elected officials ourselves, but also as voters, that elections have consequences. So please, everybody vote. Make sure, if you're worried about being in person, work your way through the absentee ballot mechanism so that we leave no votes uncounted. I want to congratulate our constituent services, council services team on the constituent management app or system that is now up and running on the city's website, where we not only can record people's concerns or complaints or positive comments, but there is a dashboard to record where those are located. They can be tracked in terms of how they're being resolved, how many there are, what kind there are, what the most significant issues are community-wide. If you haven't taken a look at it, please do go to the city's website and pop it open. It's really a terrific piece of work, and it was done in-house and really advances what one of the comments Councilor Abeyta made about using technology more creatively in a period of time where we're obviously constrained from close personal work. We have to use technology to be our friend. This is a really nice piece of work. I want to thank my colleagues for the vote on the Santa Fe promise tonight. I think it goes directly to what Councilor Cassett Sanchez was saying. We take seriously keeping people safe, and at the same time, we know we have to reopen, and so we want to work collaboratively as a community to be safe, open, and together. And I think making that a matter of city policy is really a step in the right direction, and launching a campaign so that we'll be safe, open, and together will really do us well, not only in preventing a second wave of COVID-19 from sweeping across the city, but also encouraging folks to go out now that the governor is lifting some of the restrictions and really returning fun to our community and people enjoying the community. With that regard, in that respect, I want to shout out to Randy Randall and our Economic Development, Land Use, and Public Works team for getting cracking on a program to allow restaurants to set up sidewalk tables and parking tables so that we can take advantage of the beautiful weather and start using the outdoors as a place to set up 6 foot apiece, 6 foot apart tables and chairs, and let restaurants serve customers outside safely and with fun. So that Randy's already signing up restaurants. Anybody who's listening or watching who wants to get their name on the list of restaurants that would like to participate, please get a hold of our tourism director, and we're starting to build that list right now. One last word. I think if there's a theme for tonight that we began to talk about, and we will consistently talk about going forward, it is the city's fiscal emergency. We did, I think, the right thing tonight with regard to the insurance vote. I think it was a decision that was arrived at after careful consideration and a lot of questions. But we all know that it's only part of a much larger problem situation where we really need to come to terms with the city's financial emergency. And so going forward, I think you can expect and participate actively in the development of our response to the city's $100 million projected deficit for next year. Mary McCoy can brief all of the committees about the way in which that figure was arrived at, and also some steps toward beginning to chip away at it so that we don't continually to refer to it as a $100 million deficit as if it's a number on the outside of a black box, but there actually are statistics, data, which is a theme tonight. We need more data. There's data available about how that projection was arrived at, and there are the beginnings of measures that will be coming forward to begin to reduce it systematically without waiting for the entire budget to be adopted, but rather to face the reality that we need to start taking action sooner rather than later. So I thought the dialogue, the discussion, the questions tonight were really, really excellent, and they do set the stage for the next round of governing body discussions at the committee level and together as we move to make choices, decisions that do the kind of balancing act we were choosing to do tonight, which is to try to be good fiscal agents and also respect and care for the needs of our community, quality of life in Santa Fe, and the people who work for the city, who are the people who deliver those services. So thank you all for a very productive and thoughtful council meeting. One last note to put into the minutes. We did receive comments from residents who wanted to go on record. I had mine all printed out and read them well before the meeting was convened, but anyone who submitted a comment, you should be confident that those comments were distributed, were read, were considered, and will be reflected in the minutes of this meeting as we try to get better and better at our virtual meetings to make sure that everybody is heard and everybody gets their voice represented. That completes communications from the governing body. There are no hearings for what would have been our 7 o'clock session. So at 8:07, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.